it back, but it's more than basic. It's a portion of his rap, but the core is ancient. It's supported like a pack of some more observations are important, like the fact that we're bored of fake shit. More creative, have the floor, so take it. Travel to the core is a normal placement. Tattoos on my arm in a form of face.
So, one of the gifts that conversation gives us is the ability to understand that we're all the same. You know, we start out our morning and thinking of ourselves as a single entity. And as we begin to encounter other people across the community and we engage them in conversation, we begin to feel less like alone. Because we all have common experiences. We all have things that are just not uniquely one person, but uniquely human. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it makes us feel like we're compassionate and empathetic, but it's a bad thing because it makes you feel like you're not special. And that can oftentimes have a stress all on its own. But I'm willing to take all of that on in my conversations because my ego is big enough that it needs to be shrunk down a little bit. You know, I need to know that I'm not so special a lot of the time. I hope that everyone who listens to this is willing to help me in that effort, help me shrink my ego a little bit and engage me in conversation. This is Tattoo with Children. I'm your host, Flavor Ray, in Seat A. Across from me is the Dread Pirate Benjamin in Seat B. And across from us both is the Boy Scout of America, CIO No Pain.
I don't know anything about that.
Well, it may not be literal, but it could have been. The Boy Scouts are a big organization. You could have been a Boy Scout. I didn't know that.
That's true. It's true. I almost got there and then I quit.
Guys, it's Monday. It's Monday. Normally on Monday, I start off pretty hot.
Right.
I could have done that today. I chose not to.
Right.
Because the weather's really awesome right now.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic. And so it's like, I'm not going to bring in, that hot, ranty energy when it's really cool and chill outside. So we're just going to chill out until one of you says something that pisses me off, then I'll go all ham on it.
Okay. That sounds good.
All right, yeah. So the question is, where are we today? How are we doing? I think Ben had an experience already today, talking to a dope individual across the country.
Yes, I did. I'm trying to get my microphone situated right now. I don't feel like it's working with me very well at all. But no, I had noticed there's a hip-hop artist from Queens, and I had connected with him on Instagram a few months ago, and we actually got to talk on the phone for an hour this morning. So that was pretty dope. There were no particular reasons for said conversation. Mm-hmm. There were no parameters or boundaries. He just literally asked for my phone number and then called me, and he said, I have no idea where this conversation is going to go, and I said, that's perfect.
All right. That's unique. I don't think I've ever heard of a person doing that before, with a person that they never met before, for no apparent reason.
Yeah, he on his Instagram is Shirt NYC. So,
Shirt NYC. I am familiar with his music.
He did his most recent post on IG. He literally did a hip hop performance in a ballroom full of white people having dinner, mm-hmm. and there was no music and no sound. So he literally walked around with a microphone as if he were rapping lyrics to one of his songs.
Right.
But he didn't speak out loud. So it's just a guy with a microphone
walking around
making all these exaggerated movements.
Was this his idea?
Yeah. It was a performance piece.
Yeah, he has a master's degree in art.
That's
from a school in Switzerland.
I think it's Switzerland.
or Sweden or somewhere.
Yeah, one of those S countries.
One of those
Europe.
S countries. One of the white ones.
Yeah,
In Europe.
yeah, one of the ones with health care.
So the great thing about that was, like, I don't know, like, if you took Ben on a scale of humanity and put him down, and you put, like, hip hop artists in New York on the same scale, they would be pretty far apart.
Sure.
I mean, that's country boy Ben. Barely you barely lived inside the city of Lufkin, much less a big city like New York. Mm-hmm. Compared to this kid who hasn't seen non-concrete in 30 years.
Right.
But you guys got together on a phone call, talked for an hour, and established some essential humanity.
We did. We had a very fascinating conversation. We kind of jumped into a little bit of my history, and I found myself telling him about my struggle to, view myself as an artist, which he found astounding, since I, make permanent marks on people for a living.
Right.
But then from the other side of it, he's always viewed himself as an artist, and he's always been creating, and he's always been making things.
That's fascinating.
For the majority of it, it has been hip hop. But he also writes. He also does painting and sculptures. And this was even before his schooling, because he's a high school dropout.
Well, let's see, and you've got that in common.
We do, yeah. Well, I never even.
Well, you never
went to high
high school.
Yeah, so we got the GED in common, and that's one of the interesting things that I was struck by in the conversation was how often it's almost a prerequisite for an artist that you drop out of high school.
Really?
Yeah, like the last probably 10 artists I've met have had their GEDs.
I think that may be because they stopped doing art in high school.
That's possible.
I mean, like, I think before that, it probably wasn't common at all. But because you had an art program that was designed to at least give you an appreciation for art. They cut those out about 10, 15 years ago.
Longer than
20
that.
25 years ago?
25 years ago.
Yeah, there were, like, no more art programs. And so it's... dropping out of high school may be the only path an artist actually has today, because then that gives you enough time to actually pursue your art.
Yeah. So it was that, coupled with going to see Noah Gunderson last week and tattooing him and his crew. That both of those were pretty interesting experiences. I don't know the result that they're going to have right now, but I definitely would say that I like the feeling, although it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Like, having conversations with strangers is always going to be uncomfortable, particularly if you start having things in common. Because there's a certain aspect of, can I reveal this thing to this person, and would they judge it, or would they understand it? Like, that's always the question. Are you going to judge me for this thing?
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, any judgment will be in the sense of, well, I do that too. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that happens a lot. Yeah. For example, if I were to reveal on the air now that sometimes, some days, I have what I call suicide days. Mm-hmm. Just days where I would rather be dead than alive.
Yeah. Because
life is hard. And I just think about, like, say, well, another 10 years I'll be, 50 years old. And I just look forward to those 10 years. It just seems like a slog. It just seems like I'm looking at 10 years of swamp country. It's like, I'd rather not do that.
Yeah.
But it only lasts for a little while. Something, how my kid will come in and say, I love you, Daddy, or, I'll have a good cup of coffee and say, oh, yeah, this isn't so bad, and I'll be fine. But, it's not something that you talk to a lot about. Like, I feel like killing myself today.
Right.
But it's something that I think probably everybody does at least a little bit of.
Yeah.
It's like, I know, like, the three of us, suicide days.
Maybe mine's a little bit different, but the truth of the matter is I have these really weird days where nothing makes sense. I'm an observer of people. I watch people and all that. And on these days, there's something up in my brain that makes it extremely difficult for me to understand people and what they're doing.
Sure.
I really hate to put it this way, but I had to describe it to my wife one time. I said, when I'm in that state, I honestly can only say that what I feel like is what only I can imagine would be what autism feels like every single day. To not understand the weird thing that is our social interactions and connections.
Sure, I can say that.
And from my perspective, I would definitely say that's a very foreign feeling, although I have days, but part of this might be due to inner dialogue. Mm-hmm. Like, number one, I think I expect life to be hard and I expect life to be painful. Mm-hmm. So I'm not terribly surprised when it is.
Right.
But I have kind of found that I use these little internal triggers to help myself when I start heading down that path of days where you say, like, your experience is, well, I'd rather be dead than alive. Mm-hmm. My experience is not that. My experience is that very early on, I catch that feeling, mm-hmm. and I'll start saying something like, I'm really tired, Mom. Mm-hmm. Like out loud. Like I'll talk to mother. Right. Like not my actual mother. But like more of a universal mother, and I'll say, like, I'm really tired, Mom. Like I really don't want to go to work today.
Right.
And then I'll just keep driving, or I'll keep walking, or I'll keep working on what I'm working on. But because I've identified to maybe the feminine side of myself, mm-hmm. or the universe that I am in that place, it allows me to continue, but not go down that thought process anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, so now I know, like, okay, I got to do some self-care, or I need to take a nap, or to eat a meal, or to do something that makes me happy. Yeah. But I don't go down that much further.
Yeah.
Which is a very different thing, I realize, but.
Yeah, it's because obviously neither of you vibe with my Suicide Day analogy, but I know this, and I know that this commonality. Like, for example, my wife has had pneumonia for last week. She's had pneumonia, and so she's taking the antibiotics, she's taking the steroids. Her chest is clearing, but she's very exhausted. And so, and for a person who is a marathon runner, exhaustion is one of the worst feelings ever, because now you can't do the thing that you love to do. And so she began looking up her symptoms and the track for pneumonia recovery, looking for that thing that made her recovery different, right? Looking for that thing, because if it's something different, then we can do something different medicine-wise, or, breathing treatments or something that's going to get her back to form faster. Well, she did all the research, looked it up, and turns out, no, she's perfectly normal. This just happens when you have pneumonia. It takes this amount of time. And that really kind of depressed her, because if she's not unique, then it means that she has to do the normal thing like everybody else. And it means egoically that there isn't anything special about her pneumonia. Like, people have had pneumonia, people have recovered from pneumonia, people have died from pneumonia, and her pneumonia is pretty much like their pneumonia, And so, like, when you have those experiences, I think if she were able to talk to a person who had gone through something similar, she would feel better. I really think that that's what conversation does for us. It takes those things and, like, now you can feel better.
But is that, but something you said there makes me pretty fascinated. I mean, it sends me down a little bit of a different thread, and just, blow this track up if it doesn't go where you were wanting it to. But isn't isn't it a thing though that's a very current feeling in human beings? To want everything about their experience to be unique. My pneumonia is different. Well, my cold is different. Well, my sleep apnea is different. Well, my eggs are different.
Let's explore this in just a moment. We'll take a quick break.
Doesn't matter if you're cooler, honest and the cortisol president or lose a box. Doesn't matter if you're cooler, honest and the cortisol president or lose a box.
All right, we're back with Tattoo with Children. Ben just raised an interesting idea that the want to make all of our experiences unique today is kind of one of our most universal experiences. Currently, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that was in the. I guess this is one of those things that can arise from our continuous interactions and information overload from the information age. Yes.
It could be that. It could be the turn of the century. I mean, I don't know. I'm fascinated by when you said that. It struck a chord with me because in other words, I can't think of a vegan that I have met in the last decade.
Okay.
That has agreed with any other vegan, principally. They're all unique.
Okay.
I can't think of any Republican that I've met in the last decade that principally agrees on the foundational definition of Republican. They agree on some things, don't get me wrong.
Right. They have there's a general platform.
Sure.
But
mine is unique within it.
Right. Yeah, within that I am a unique snowflake flower butterfly pattern. Like I see a lot of you mentioned vegans, and I see a lot of vegan for the animal things. You know, be vegan for the animals, animal cruelty, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But from a lot of these same people, you see them using a lot of products that are, you know, very much cruel to animals. Mm-hmm. You know, mascaras and, you know, vegetables that are mass produced and use a lot of pesticides that get into the groundwater. And while I don't judge that, mm-hmm. it is saying that while they're vegan for the animals, they're not vegan for the animals the way that I used to know it, mm-hmm. where these guys would not even dream mm-hmm. of, you know, engaging in makeup mm-hmm. because of vivisections and things like that. Mm-hmm. And so I think we have a tendency nowadays to see things that we like and accept the trend as philosophy. Mm-hmm. And so people start leading trendy lives, not realizing that they've sort of missed out on the basis of it. Because all you get is the Facebook portion. You don't really get the, you know, well, this is the fucked up part of it. Mm. You know, like that's really what people need. Like they need to know the fucked up part of veganism. Mm. You know, the part is like, okay, you're gonna have to take, you know, X amount of vitamins, and you're not gonna like to eat this shit, but you're gonna have to, and you know, I mean, yeah, and things like okay, you're vegan and you expect to lose a lot of weight. Not gonna happen, you know. So that's not how it works. Your weight's probably gonna stay the same if you do it correctly. That sort of thing doesn't track into the Facebook mask of it, the Facebook reputation of it, and so people end up doing it wrong. They end up trying to make it look like something. Mm. And I think that more than anything else is the reason why people think it's unique, because like I do it differently. It's like, well, you're doing it, and it's different. It's just not correct. You know, I mean, it's not to be all judgmental about the way you live your life, but it ain't the way that my grandfather did veganism, that sort of thing. But I'm picking on vegans for no reason. Like it could be anything. I see it mostly, honestly, in Christianity.
And that to me, I think strikes another chord at the same time that I've just been thinking about is, kind of what you described. To me, sounds like people doing things for the sake of forming an identity,
Yes.
as opposed to doing things for I'm not going to say a real reason, for a particular reason.
Well, yeah, they'll see an identity that they like, and they'll try to adopt that identity. It's kind of a high school thing,
Yeah.
Kind of what you did in middle school and high school. Only they're 30 years old doing it.
Yeah. That's
Like I don't know if it's like the particular reason. Like I threw out the information age out there because that's a good place to start for me for anything that happens today. Because honestly, everything happens on the internet today.
right.
Do we have reality outside the internet now? I'm not even sure. And so that's a good place for me to start. But I don't know if that's actually has anything to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the internet plays a role. I'm not denying that, but I think that this goes back to kind of, with the desire to be unique. You talked about the creation. I forget what your exact words were, but it struck me as like the creation of the self. So we're all still defining ourselves much later than we did before, and maybe that's because we view the internet as interference between us and our own life. But what I'm trying to figure out is what does that have to do with your daily experiences? Are people actually not having experiences because of the internet?
I think people complain all the time about people that have their head in their cell phones, right? Mm-hmm. They walk with their heads in their cell phones. They eat with their heads in their cell phones.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen it many times. People sitting on a couch, at a coffee shop, and they've all got their cell phones out.
Yeah, but 30 years ago it was the newspaper.
Well, yeah, but if I saw something in the newspaper
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to talk to the guy next to me about it, I'd have to put the newspaper down and tell him about it. Whereas now I can actually just message him in the same app, the article, and don't actually have to interact with him.
Right. The thing I don't like about the comparison of, people being in their cell phones versus people being the nose in the newspaper is the fact that simply by virtue of the cell phone, you have access to so much more information than is in today's copy of the newspaper.
Yeah, several orders of magnitude more information.
Right. You could reasonably spend, I don't know, an hour and a half, going through a big paper like the Times back in the day.
Right.
But literally with your cell phone, you can spend the entirety of 16 hours a day nose in that thing and not even touch 1% of the information available at your fingertips.
It's true. It's a glut of information. And I think I don't think that people have just a need to absorb and process all of that. But I do think there's a tendency to start viewing the world through that lens. In other words, rather than look at what's going on outside or on the street about, say, the economy, they would look up, what does this group of bloggers have to say about what's going on in the economy? And then they'll take the reaction of the bloggers as being more true than what they're seeing on the street.
Is that because it's easier?
I think it's just because it's just more, that's where most of the data comes from. I think that's just where they absorb their input from.
Okay, but again, the data doesn't come from anywhere. The data is just there. See,
Yeah.
I always okay.
Well, it comes from the phone. It's where they're getting it from.
Okay, but I always viewed the phone as like a library.
Okay.
So, like for instance,
Okay.
The phone is a library.
Sure.
So I can look up anything I want.
Right.
I don't want to spend all my time there. Libraries are incredibly boring.
I would say that that's not how people use their phones as much today. I would say your phone is more like your eyes.
Really?
And that's how you're absorbing the world.
Well, and there's another aspect to it too. Going back, on before phones, right? Before this access to all this information, your identity was whatever you were in real life. And then with the advent of the internet and this interaction across the world, now your identity is not just who you are in real life, but it could be a completely different thing in the internet world, in the cyber world,
And it's almost as if you can switch those two things out, no matter how far apart they are.
Right. And with way things are going now, you might have multiple online personas.
Right.
That only people who know how to work the ins and outs of the internet could actually link together. Right.
Right.
But for most people, looking at your Instagram versus Facebook, a Facebook business versus a LinkedIn, you have all these different carefully crafted personas at all these outlets. And
maybe
you're
that's what I'm
essentially
doing
giving
wrong.
yourself a multiple personality disorder.
Maybe I should
having to keep all
carefully
those
craft
things
my
going.
personas. I don't carefully craft my personas.
But again, isn't that about us? In other words, isn't that about our perspective? Because again, that this goes back to the idea that the media is doing something to you. Like the phone is allowing someone else to do something. So you're saying, Mike, that people are carefully crafting, maybe not carefully, but they're crafting a persona online. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, but isn't that the same thing as a resume? You're just saying it's available to more people now?
No,
No, it's not. It's
No,
not a resume.
a
A resume
resume
is not a persona.
yeah, a resume. You can't look at my resume and tell how much fun I had at Disneyland. You can't look at a resume and tell how much I love or don't love my ex-wife. Like these are all things. Like we give more information on a typical Facebook page than most people have about their close family members their entire lives. And sometimes the information is true, and sometimes it's not. But like CL Noah was saying, the information that you give is curated for a certain persona for a lot of people. Like they're giving the impression that they want to give, and it could be a true impression or a false impression, but it's something that they control. And it may or may not match up to their actual person. And so if it doesn't match up to their actual person, then they have essentially two personalities, one online and one off.
Okay, but what if that's just accidental?
I think it is accidental.
I mean,
a lot of
it
the time.
absolutely can be accidental. Even when I say carefully crafted, right, that doesn't imply intent. Carefully crafted could just be by rules of engagement on these social media platforms, right? By seeing what other people do and how they use it. There's a big thing out there now about being depressed because you make the choice to consume all these other people's content, and all they're doing is posting all the happy pictures, the happy times. And now you have to deal with, because you're not stable yourself, or you have identity issues yourself, or you have problems in your own life. You don't see their problems. So you're not getting a real perspective. You're getting a truly carefully crafted persona put in your face, which creates all sorts of problems.
Okay, so how does that different in you? First, Mike, how does that differ? How is that different than the carefully crafted persona I see when I go to the restaurant and someone is standing in line at the little queue there waiting to be seated? Didn't they also craft that? In other words, they put on certain clothes, they wore makeup or they didn't wear makeup, they I'm just not seeing the difference between real life and what happens on my phone.
It's not a matter of difference in real life, right? The difference is in the multitudes, okay? Online, you could have 10 different personalities currently active at once. In real life, at any given time, you can really only be one.
Okay, but that wouldn't that be the same as someone getting blackout drunk on Friday and being a deacon on Sunday?
Absolutely.
It's the same, but it's Friday to Sunday. It's not Friday to Friday.
Now imagine for a second that there will never ever be any interaction between the two social groups that you described that would see those two things.
Which is accurate.
Okay.
Where I grew up.
Right. And so as a result, it's sort of like what he's describing is sort of like on American Gods, where you have a bunch of Jesuses in the same room. You know, it's like imagine everybody having that many of them in the same room in real life. It would be a form of chaos.
It's a form of chaos that you end up internalizing. And so in order to solidify your identity, right, what are your choices? Okay? You can either disconnect, unplug, and turn all those things off, right, which would severely limit your ability to get the drug that you're searching for, which is attention, approval, praise,
yeah,
whatever, okay? And then if you disconnect and build your own identity in person, right, that's a very hard road, okay?
Sure.
Or start assuming pieces of identities to try to merge those together. I don't know. It's an open question. Like, what are your choices?
What I would have described is the person in line, right? I see them in line, they're wearing their clothes. Like, I can make a lot of assumptions about what their life is like, but I don't know anything about them. If I want to learn more about them, I have to somehow get to their table, have to engage them in conversation. You know, I have to I have to establish a link with them by giving a piece of myself, establishing a connection with them, and then us have an interaction until I learn. Okay. Whereas online, I don't have to engage with them at all to learn all the information.
Correct.
I can look it up without ever actually engaging with them.
And on top of that, you have another aspect there. Even in person, without actually making that link, right? Body language is a dimension that you can't get on the internet.
Yes,
in most cases,
which is 80% of the communication,
right?
That we take in person is about how this person moves, reacts, eyes, nose, breathing.
So all you know is what this person is giving you at face value online.
Okay, but see that I think that's where I'm disconnecting from both of you.
Sure.
It's the same thing. I
In what way?
In that you are the person doing the connecting. So, for instance, you're in line at Walmart, and there's a person a row over, and they're also checking out. And you can see what they're wearing. You can hear how they talk or don't talk. You can make some assumptions about their age, so on and so forth. But if you want to get to know them better, you have to interact.
Yes.
Like you said, you have to go to their table, or you have to get in line with them, or you have to, hey, how you doing? And kind of make a motion to stop.
Sure.
Okay. Online, it's the exact same.
How so?
You can see what they're wearing. You can see what they're saying. You can see what music they like. You can see all these things. But if you want to get to know them deeper, you're still going to have to interact.
I disagree. Because not because you're wrong that to get to know deeper you have to interact. The interaction that you get is going to be exactly as deep as the bio. It's never going to get any deeper.
Okay, but I still think the perspective here is the main thing. Because you guys are both saying, and maybe I'm not seeing something, But I'm still arguing from a perspective of from you. You're saying you can get more information online. But yet at the same exact time, you're saying you get more information in person.
No. Okay, I see it. Okay, first, you do get more information online, but it is less accurate.
But see, that's where I disagree. Maybe it's because I played poker for a living. I disagree. When I look at you right now, with the clothes you picked out today, and the hat, and the undershirt, and the shoes, Michael, I don't assume any of it's true. Like, I don't know how you're doing. I have no clue how you're doing. There's no way I could possibly know that. You say, well, I told you. Do you think for a second I believe you? Like, I don't believe you any more than I believe a Facebook profile. I don't believe that either. And I'm wondering, I'm staying with this not to be obtuse. I'm staying with this because I think you're both describing something that the majority of people would agree with.
Sure.
You're staying with, you're both describing something. In other words, you're describing a feeling or a perspective that the world at large would agree with. In other words, they can go on the internet and gain something. And I'm not entirely sure I believe that anything can be gained. It's still unknown.
And well, I understand I understand what you're saying about perspective, like how your shifted perspective of where I'm coming from versus where you're coming from. I'm not exactly saying that in person that you get better information. What I'm saying is that in person, when you have an interaction, there has to be an exchange. There has to be an exchange of, like, you can call it energy, or you can call it, I don't know. There's a social contract involved. Like there is an agreement in a conversation that isn't necessary in a Twitter profile. You know, so I can absolutely read a person's tweets for years and know all sorts of information about what happened over those years and never actually engage the person, even though I have all this information about them. Whereas I can engage a person for 20 minutes, I don't have near as much information about them as I gain from reading their tweets as far as information goes, but I know that person better. I can actually call that person a friend after 20 minutes of conversation, you know, if the conversation goes well. Whereas I don't think you can do that on Twitter effectively. I really don't. Like, you can absolutely, like, over the course of 8 years, I have found 3 people online I can call friends. I know exactly who they are. I know exactly who I am. We've had a bunch of engagements. Those 3 people, I have, like, how many followers do I have? I have somewhere along the just under 2,000 followers. Those 2,000 people don't mean very much to me, whereas those 3 people do. You know, and it's because those 3 people I had direct engagement with. You know, I spoke to them. I talked to them on the phone. That kind of shit.
Okay, but there's still an element that we're missing here. Is it that what I'm describing is all coming from the same source? And it's all internally driven versus what it sounds like you're describing is that some of the information you're getting that allows you to make those decisions is externally driven?
I mean, yes, it's going to be driven outside of myself if I'm going to get information that is new to me. It's not going to come from within me. It's going to come from without me.
Okay, let's take a short break, and then I want to come back and I want to use the analogy, if possible. I'd like you to go down the road with me of the library.
Okay, we can do that. All right, we're back here. Third segment of Tattoo with Children. Ben, you were about to go into the library analogy a little bit deeper.
Well, where I'm struggling is, I'm attempting to come at this from your perspective, but and I don't think it's a bad perspective per se, because we're trying to work something out here. So I'm coming at it from the perspective of it's a library. So if you imagine the great library of Alexandria.
Sure.
And it has all the books in it.
Yep.
None of that is harming anyone.
Correct.
Those books are just there.
Right.
They can be read or not read.
Right.
It has very little impact on Texas. First of all, because it's in Alexandria.
Right.
Second of all, because a lot of people don't know how to read.
Okay.
And then third of all, it would take them a very long time to read all of those books.
Okay.
I think what y'all are describing to me sounds like something very different than that, but that's how I view the internet.
Yeah, it is very different than what you're describing. It's from my perspective. From my perspective, it could be a library, but it's a library that everybody can read, regardless if they know how to read or not. It is a library that everybody goes to every day. Whether
okay, well, go back to that. How can they read it if they don't know how to read?
That's just how this library works. Let's say it's a
picture library.
It's a picture library. It can be pictures. It could be videos. It could be. They have tons of
podcasts.
In this library, they got tons of people that are constantly reading books out loud, and so you just walk over to that person and they'll read the same book to you.
Okay, but
as many times as you want.
But again, you still had to go there.
Right. Yes, you got to go there, and you're going to go there every day.
But you don't actually have to physically go there anymore.
Yeah, it's like that's the difference. It's like
it's in your hand.
Yeah, you're still taking the choice out of it, Mike. I
Like,
don't know how to prove this fallacy to you, bro. You're gonna have to get into some Socrates here.
Okay, so
there is a choice.
There's a motherfucking door, guys.
There is a choice for me and you. Okay. For a person born after us, they're not going to get information if they don't go to the internet. That's where the information is. And if they ask a question to somebody, that person will say 9 times out of 10 today, go Google it.
Yeah, exactly. Or they'll get snarky.
It's different than it was before.
Let me Google that for you, link.
Like it's just how it is today.
I can't wait to re-listen to this podcast in a year, guys, because I'm hearing what you're saying, but I can prove the exact opposite.
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, I can. Do you guys want to put my phone in a lockbox and watch how well my life goes? It's still a choice.
Your life will go brilliantly.
Okay, but I'm arguing that my 11-year-old's life would go brilliantly, or a
Probably so.
15-year-old's, or a 17-year-old.
Anything different than that.
And my daughter's life will go spectacularly too, because sometimes I take her offline.
Right.
Sometimes I actually do that because I don't want the effects that I'm seeing in society to be as pronounced as they are in society to be pronounced in her. So
you're not letting her go to the library.
So I don't let her go to that library all the time, and it's on purpose because, like, I mean, the fact of the matter is, I'm a little different. You know, like it's like I see what everyone else is doing, and I try to do something a little bit different. yes, there is a choice. I mean, there's a choice in everything that we do, but if you don't know how to read, there's very few ways for you to get the works of Socrates. And so we teach people how to read so they get the works of Socrates, so they can absorb it for their own. Because there's no way for me to tell you what Socrates meant. You have to read it and decide it for yourself. Well, the internet is sort of the same way, where everybody has to access the internet on their own in order to get anything out of it at all. Like, we know that inherently, that I can't, dictate to you what the internet said. While at the same time, because of the amount of information, because of its nature of information today, what we're actually asking you to do is establish who you are in the world, because this is what the world is. In other words, the information that you get in the outside world, for people who have grown up in this generation, in this world with the internet, the information that they get in the outside world is exactly the same as the information that they get through the internet. It doesn't have any difference to them. So you're saying, well, just cut off their phones. Yeah, and eventually, like any person that's blind, they'll learn how to get around. Maybe they'll be better off for it, but the fact of the matter is you took away one of their senses.
That's exactly where I was going. It has become another sense, and that's like you feel like you lose a sense when you do it.
I mean, that's
and we're not taking away the choice. There is obviously the choice,
Right.
but there's also consequence.
you can absolutely go around blindfolded, but you're going to need to learn a whole different way of living once you go around blindfolded.
Oh, sure, yeah. There's. I think though that's that my analogy of a library, though, I'm still not understanding how it's different.
Like, for you're looking at it as the library is giving information, and information doesn't hurt anybody. What I'm looking at, say, if that information in that library was all the information. So in other words, a person going to this library is taking that library not as information that is general, but as all the information that they can gain about the world. In other words, I get information through my ears, my eyes, my sense of touch, my sense of taste. All of this gives me information and colors what I view the world as.
Okay.
Whereas a person in this library, using it the way that I'm saying, gets their color for the world through their information from the library. So if the library says this color is blue, that's what they believe, even if that color on the outside world is red.
Yes, the way to put that for me, what I would say is, the information available, the wealth of it creates a situation where the people who learn only from that tend to lack discernment.
Yes, because it's just hard to tell the difference. It was I like what I said outside earlier where we were smoking. Looked at a stop sign and said that stop sign is red. It has 8 sides. All right, it says the word stop on it. That's how I know it's a stop sign. Well, if on Facebook something came out and said, okay, guys, all the stop signs now are triangles, and they say the word halt on it, and they're yellow. If I see that 30,000 times, a lot of people are not going to stop at the red 8-sided stop signs anymore, because they now know that the actual stop signs are triangle, yellow, and have the word halt on it.
Right. And this can be used positively and negatively.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not positive or negative, right? And an example of that might be, I've seen it happen a dozen times, where I'll be scrolling through Facebook, and it pops up, it's now illegal to smoke with your kids in the car. Okay? And every single time I see that, there's going to be a comment in there that says, this is in the United Kingdom. this is not in the USA.
Right.
And a whole bunch of other comments saying, oh, we're so glad they did this here in Texas. This is people who just read that it's now illegal to smoke in a car with your kids, and they assume, without even looking at the source information,
right,
that it applies to them in their locality.
Can I ask why it was interesting for you to read their comments?
Why was it interesting for me to read their comments? The interesting thing was the pattern I recognized that every time I saw this same or a very similar article posted, that it was the same type of thing where the majority of comments were talking about the local area when the article applied to someone else.
Are you asking
at least
why start reading the comments in the first place?
No. I just noticed that I feel like Mike did something with this new library that we're talking about that he would have never done in real life. So
that is absolutely correct.
Yeah,
I did.
I
was able to read in real time what people think about the information that they're digesting.
That's another way that the analogy kind of breaks down when you're talking about the internet being a library.
Well,
because
it doesn't break down at all.
Well, it does, because in the library, I can't write a book and put it on the shelf and have somebody come and check it out. Whereas on the internet, I can actually do that. I can write a whole fucking book and say, okay, this is a new book for you to read.
I think Ben's point there is that fundamentally it doesn't change the flow, the desired effect of the library, even though it adds to it.
Right. That's just me adding to it.
Okay,
but I'm going to disagree. This is probably the most fun I've had since we've started the podcast. You're wrong. You can write a book. You could always write a book. Since humans have been around, they've been writing books. So you could always write a book and add to the library. Now, in certain places, you wouldn't have been allowed to put your book in the library because you're black. Other places, you wouldn't have been able to put your book in the library because you're an asshole. And in further other places, you wouldn't have been able to put your book in the library because someone would have had to read it first and agree with whether or not it went in there. But as a human being, you could always write a book and put it in the library.
I can write a book, I can put it on a library shelf, and the librarian will come through, take the book off the shelf, put it in the trash can.
Right.
Ban it from the library, all that shit. It doesn't add to the library. There's only one way to add to the library, that's through the librarian.
Okay. But again, this is fascinating because you just said you couldn't do it, but you could. We could always write books.
Yeah, I'm not saying you can't write a book. I'm saying you can't add to the library.
There's two factors involved that are different with the internet.
Okay.
Time, right? How long does it take to actually do it?
It's real time in the internet.
And two, gatekeepers.
Okay, but see, I'm going to disagree with you on time. This is why my perspective is different. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying it's a different perspective.
Yeah, I'm listening.
One of the reasons is you say it takes less time to write a comment. That's true, which is why I don't read comments. Because I actually know if someone took the time to write a book, they actually give a shit.
Right.
That's why I read it. I also still pay for books. I paid for one last night.
Yeah.
And I read 12 chapters of it after midnight.
Sure.
Because a guy took the time to put that many words on a page. I don't read someone's opinion about that book, and I have never been to a library and said, hey, has anyone else read this book? I want to discuss what you think about this book. That's never happened.
Right.
Not once in the history of my life. I've been living 40 years. I've never once asked another person's opinion in the library, hey, do you think this is a good book? I actually don't give a fuck.
Okay, listeners, if you have plans on inviting Pirate Ben to your book club, don't waste your goddamn time.
Yeah,
he's not
seriously,
coming.
he's not coming at all.
He doesn't.
Not. I've never.
He doesn't care about your. What, you got a Bible study? Fuck your Bible study. I don't give a fuck what you say about it.
Okay, but this is. But
you know what? You might
why,
be able to attract him if you say if it's a dicks out Bible study. That might.
This is
That'll attract you.
But this is
that's how you get
why
Mike to show
I'm
up.
wondering
dicks out Bible study.
Mike said he was looking for patterns in what people said.
It's
Why would you do that?
It's because
okay.
All right.
Now, listen.
I'll let Mike
There's
answer.
two things here,
Okay.
right, that I have to come back at you on.
All right.
One is the time factor in the library has nothing to do with how much it takes to create the content. It has everything to do with how long it takes to disseminate the content, right? So, if you were, when it was only just physical libraries, right, and the time of the library at Alexandria, if you were the type of person who wrote a book, okay, it would literally take many, many years for copies of your books to get into libraries.
Correct.
Okay?
Okay.
So dissemination of information, the speed at which information can disseminate is very different with the internet.
Yes.
Okay? That means information
you.
that is correct or incorrect factually can disseminate very fast.
Yes. Agreed.
The second thing I'm going to come back at you on, if I can remember it, is the pattern thing, right?
Okay.
I don't actively go looking for patterns.
Okay.
I just notice them. It's part of who I am. It's part of what I've done.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Okay.
So I just noticed these patterns and thought it's interesting that it's repetitive. It's interesting that this has happened multiple times within my feed because my localities for Facebook are they're relatively stable. It's
Sure.
East Texas and New Jersey, right?
Sure.
And what I've noticed is that the locality, for the 12 times I've seen this posted, and that is a literal number, 12 times I've seen this thing posted in that same locality, and sometimes the very same people are making the comment, this is a great thing that happened in Texas. Hey, person who believes everything they read on the internet, did you actually read the article? Because it's not Texas, it's the UK.
Okay.
Like if that
Why
was that,
do
that's
you,
like
why
that's
do
like
you
having
care though?
That's like having a book and you open the book up and if you have a book of information in it, then there is a glossary in the book and there is a appendix in the book.
There's an index.
An index in the book. You like open the book and then you go to the glossary and the glossary is changing because somebody is changing it and the appendix is changing because somebody is changing it. Like it's more information being added to the book while you're reading it.
Yep.
And so it's only natural since it's changed. Like, okay, this is something that's different. Let's see if it matches up with the book. And you go and you look back through it's like, this doesn't match up. And you say, hey, I'm going to now adjust that and say, okay, you said that this is in the book. I say that it's not. It's like you go back and forth with the information. Like this isn't something that can happen at an actual library. It's something that happens on the internet.
It only happens, right. It does absolutely happen on the internet, and I understand that the world on the internet is changing.
Well,
And
here's-
so,
okay, go ahead.
and so 30,000 people could tell you that the stop sign is now yellow. And
Right.
and more than 30,000 people could be impacted by that. And then there are even more people who have an opinion about it changing, even though nothing happened.
And even then, it's okay, guys. The actual thing didn't actually happen. This is all a lie. But I think that we should actually change the stop signs to triangles being yellow. And so this is a whole nother movement that we're going to start right now because I like the dude that came up with it.
And now Grandma's not making any apple pie.
And now Grandma starts making it up. See, here's the thing about the internet. The internet is not a library. Okay, the internet is something that has never existed in any place in the universe. It is the Aleph. And what is the Aleph? The Aleph is the sum of all information everywhere. You can view it from every viewpoint at once. That's a thing that honestly only existed in literature until the internet made it real. So right now on the internet, I not only can know what is in every book on the planet, I can actually know what everyone thinks about every book on the planet. I can read it from the pro perspective and from the con perspective. I can read it from the up and the down. And it can happen at any given moment.
But you would agree that just like with the library analogy, if you were to take as much time with that information as you did with a book, you would probably have a slightly different understanding of the information in question.
If you were to, if I were to do that, then I grew up reading books and taking information slowly, examining it thoroughly, and establishing my philosophy based upon things I decided for myself was true.
Right.
That's how I was taught to live and examine life. I think a lot of people who grew up with the Aleph were told the things in the Aleph are information about the world. Mm-hmm. Now, if they get information in the Aleph that happens to be not in the world, that doesn't make a difference to them.
What is that word you're using, Aleph?
Aleph is what I described. It's from the story.
Spell it for me.
Oh, Aleph. Aleph.
Okay, got it.
And so if they said the information that's in this Aleph is information of the world, and if they get information from the Aleph that's not of the world, it doesn't make any difference.
Okay, who are these people? Have you met them?
The people that get information, yeah, I met them all the time. They're everybody.
Okay,
it's everybody.
Okay.
Do we know people that don't get information from the internet? Because I'd be interested in talking to those people.
Well, I think this goes back to my issue of perspective, because when you describe these people, the they that are out there, you're interact. So
it's me too.
But what I mean is, you had an experience this morning on Twitter.
Sure.
And now you're walking around wondering if that guy driving in the car next to you or crossing the sidewalk is one of those people who, like Mike described, believes that it's okay to smoke with the kids in your car, even though that happened in Europe, or so on or so forth. So, in other words, you're interacting with society at large as if it's those people now. When we don't know.
I don't really do that. Like another I try very hard to. In other words, like if you see me on Twitter, Hunter Vanguard, I am very, very political on Hunter Vanguard Twitter. Extremely political. That's not how I am in the actual world. I don't club people over the head with politics or my politics or anyone's politics if I can help it.
No. I know
like
that.
to engage
right. Yeah, you do. But that's what I'm saying. Is it? Don't you think it colors your perspective a little? That there are these imaginary people that know all these wrong things and have all these wrong opinions, and then you walk out into the world. You don't think that affects you at all?
This is why I don't Twitter.
I mean, it probably does, I guess. Like I hadn't. I try very hard not to let it affect me. Like it's like I mean I know. I know, like on Facebook, if I was doing Facebook, I think it would be more difficult. On Facebook, people's online representatives are presented as being close to their actual persona. And so they'll take a policy position or something like that, or say something fucked up or something you don't agree with. And you either have to engage with it right then on Facebook, or you have to engage with it the next time you see them to do you really believe this fucked up thing or whatnot? Whereas in other social medias, it doesn't quite work that way, at least not the way that I engage with it. This conversation is obviously a deep, long conversation, which we're going to have to come back to because we're just about out of time here. But I agree with Pirate Ben. This has probably been our most enjoyable conversation. And the conversation has occurred on Tattoo with Children. You can find Tattoo with Children on Facebook at Tattoo with Children, on IG at Tattoo with Children, on Twitter at Tattooed With because they shorten our ats on Twitter. And you can find me on IG at Madaro Shadow, on Twitter at Hunter Vanguard. You can find Ben at Black Crow Brother on IG. and at Black Spot Tattoo Company. You can find Mike Payne, spelled Payne, at CIO Payne and at Payne.points on IG. Guys, we're going to hit this one over and over and over again because Ben is obviously fucked in the head about it, and we got to get it right.
Love that.
All right. I love you guys.
See you.
Bring it back, but it's more than basic. Cause a portion of his rap at the core is ancient. It's supported like a pack of some more observations are important, like the fact that we're bored of fake shit. More creative, have the floor, so take it. Travel to the tour is a normal placement. Tattoos on my